July 10th, 1942. Akutan Island, Aleutian chain. Cold air lashes across the volcanic ridges as a PBY Catalina patrol plane pushes through a low ceiling of grey clouds. The war in the Pacific has reached one of its strangest, loneliest fronts, a place where fog rolls in like a living thing, and the wind cuts through uniforms like knives. Down below, the island is nothing but folded hills of moss-covered tundra, icy bogs, and the glint of waterlogged hollows. The Aleutians are a world forgotten by most of the United States, but not today. Today, something impossible lies hidden in the grass. Inside the Catalina, the crew leans over the observation blister, eyes scanning the ground. The pilot, Lieutenant William Tees, banks the flying boat to the left as his co-pilot calls out something sharp and urgent. There, 3 o'clock low, something metallic. Tees presses his face to the glass. At first, he sees nothing. Then the fog thins and a shape appears. A sleek, pale green aircraft, half buried in the grass. Its wings, still mostly intact. Its propeller bent but recognizable. And on the vertical stabilizer, a red circle, a Japanese Zero. No one in the plane speaks for 3 full seconds. It's the kind of silence that only comes from witnessing something you know has the power to change the war. Because up to this moment, every American pilot who has faced the Zero has returned with the same story. We can't beat them in a dogfight. And until this moment, no fully intact Zero has ever been recovered. The Catalina circles lower, kicking up gusts of cold mist. Below them, the wreck lies nearly untouched, as if the aircraft simply fell asleep in the tundra. A sensation moves through the crew, awe mixed with disbelief. They've heard of crashed Japanese aircraft found in China, in Burma, in shallow lagoons across the Pacific. But those were always burnt, torn open, riddled with bullet holes, missing engines, or so mangled that nothing useful could be learned. This is different. This Zero looks whole. The Catalina lands in a nearby stretch of calm water, its hull slamming lightly against the surface. A small reconnaissance team is ferried ashore by inflatable dinghy. Among them is aviation machinist's mate first class Jimmy Starnes, a mechanic with the kind of instincts you only get from years of living elbow deep in aircraft engines. They push through ankle-deep mud, climb a small grass-covered rise, and stop. There it is. The Zero sits nose down in a gentle slope of bog, the tail slightly elevated. The cockpit canopy is smashed inward, the glass crusted with dirt. The landing gear is retracted, and the propeller blades are curled like twisted fingers, proof that the engine was running when it hit. Starnes moves slowly, reverently, as if approaching a dangerous animal. He wipes a hand along the fuselage and feels the surviving paint beneath his fingertips. It's smooth, surprisingly so. The craftsmanship is unlike anything the Americans have seen up close. The pilot still lies inside. Japan never came back for him, never even searched for the wreck. Later, intelligence officers would learn why. The Japanese Naval Command believed the pilot, Petty Officer First Class Tadayoshi Koga, had crashed into the ocean and drowned. The Akutan bog that preserved the aircraft had been mistaken for dark water from the air, and so the Zero survived, untouched, forgotten, waiting to be found, waiting to change everything. Every pilot in the Pacific knows the legend of the Zero. Stories spread like wildfire through briefing tents. How it could outturn anything. How it climbed like a homesick angel. How it seemed to dance in the sky while American planes lumbered like trucks. How entire squadrons had been wiped out by small teams of Zeros. How one Japanese ace shot down 9 planes in a single mission. Even the US Navy's best fighters, the F-4F Wildcat, the P-40 Warhawk, struggled against it. At the start of the war, the Zero seemed unstoppable. But now, here it is, lying in the grass before a group of astonished Americans. Starnes crouches near the engine and whispers, "It's barely damaged. Damn. We can actually rebuild this." The officer in charge turns slowly toward him. "Say that again." Starnes points to the cowling, the cylinders, the oil cooler, the carburetor intake. He's cataloguing the shape of 1,000 small miracles. The frame is intact, the wings are straight, the tailplane barely bent, the controls present, the engine, shockingly, recoverable. This is not salvage. This is a prize, one of the most valuable pieces of intelligence imaginable, a complete, flyable Zero. The reconnaissance team radios back to Dutch Harbor. Within minutes, the message begins to ripple through US Navy channels across Alaska. "We have a Zero, intact." At first, the reply is disbelief. Commanders assume it must be an error, maybe a wreck from China or a non-operational trainer. But when the details arrive, the mood shifts from skepticism to electric excitement. This is one of the few moments in the war when intelligence officers feel like they are touching destiny. Because the Zero is a puzzle the US has never been able to solve. Only fragments were ever recovered. A wing here, a scorched engine there, a section of fuselage pulled from the ocean. But none of those could explain the aircraft's astounding agility. None could reveal its true weaknesses. Now, they finally have the full blueprint. Akutan Island goes from a forgotten outpost to the sudden center of the Pacific intelligence war. Within 24 hours, recovery equipment begins mobilizing. A small crane ship is dispatched. Engineers gather tools, slings, hoists. Pilots and intelligence officers prepare to fly north. And somewhere in the back of every mind is the same thought. If we understand how this plane works, we can nigh defeat it. As the team prepares the wreck for removal, they examine what remains of Tadayoshi Koga, a young pilot only 19 years old. His uniform is soaked through, his harness torn. He died instantly when the Zero flipped on landing. There is a quiet solemnity as the Marines lift him from the cockpit. War does not erase dignity. He is buried on a nearby slope with care and respect, a simple grave marked with stones. None of the Americans take pleasure in his death. If anything, they feel a strange respect for him. A young man caught between nations, whose final moments accidentally delivered one of the most important intelligence breaks of the war. A war is made of tragedies, but sometimes fate rearranges tragedy into opportunity. Koga's Zero becomes the foundation for a tactical revolution. But that transformation will only begin once the aircraft reaches engineers capable of understanding it, men who will soon push it to its limits, tear it apart, fly it, and measure every strength and flaw. The next stage of its journey begins when the wreck is lifted out of the mud, and that moment comes on a grey, wind-swept morning as the crane ship anchors just offshore. The recovery team attaches slings under the wings and tail, mud dripping from the fuselage. The crane operator eases the boom upward. The Zero rises from the tundra, first an inch, then a foot, then several yards, water streaming from the wheel wells like tears. Even damaged, it's beautiful, aerodynamic, lethal, a work of engineering mastery. The Marines and sailors who watch feel a mix of disbelief and anticipation. They know, even if the full scope hasn't sunk in yet, that they're witnessing a turning point. The Zero is loaded onto the ship's deck and secured for transport. The vessel turns toward Dutch Harbor, its engines rumbling against the cold waves. The Aleutian fog swallows the shoreline behind them. Ahead lies the airfield, then San Diego, then the test pilots waiting to uncover secrets that Japan never intended to reveal. Secrets that will change US fighter tactics overnight. The crane ship pushes through the frigid waters of the Aleutian chain, its hull creaking under the repeated slap of grey, churning waves. The recovered Zero is tied down near the center of the deck, dripping a thin trail of seawater as the crew members gather around it between their shifts, touching it, inspecting it, staring at it as if it were a ghost. No one has ever seen one this close before. The pale green paint, weathered from the crash, but still visible, bears the precise brushwork of the Imperial Japanese Navy. Every rivet, every aerodynamic curve, every mechanic's signature touch is a revelation. The men circle it like archaeologists around an ancient relic. But this relic isn't ancient. It's alive with implications. Engineers aboard the ship already begin to take notes, even though they are under strict orders not to disturb the aircraft until the intelligence officers can inspect it. Measurements are recorded from a distance. Angles are estimated. Control surfaces are visually examined from a safe distance. Even these first external assessments reveal details American engineers have long theorized, but never confirmed. The Zero's skin is shockingly thin. The metal frame is deliberately lightweight. The whole machine has been built around agility, not protection. This first insight alone resonates through the ship in hushed tones. They've all heard the stories from Guadalcanal, from Wake Island, from the Coral Sea. American bullets passing cleanly through the Zero's frame. Japanese pilots bailing out the moment their fuel tank ignites. The plane flipping into uncontrollable spirals under high-speed dives. Now, standing before it, every rumor gains weight. The Zero has a weakness, and it's written right into its bones. When the ship arrives at Dutch Harbor, the Zero is transported under guard to a hangar previously used for damaged US aircraft. The moment it arrives, everything shifts. Intelligence officers, aircraft mechanics, naval aviation experts, men whose careers revolve around understanding enemy machines, swarm the site. The hangar doors roll back with a mechanical groan. Cold Aleutian air sweeps across the concrete floor as the Zero is brought inside on a flatbed. Soldiers close the doors behind them, shutting out the wind. Inside, the silence becomes ceremonial. For the first time in the Pacific War, the United States stands face to face with a complete Mitsubishi A6M2 Zero. The men gather around it. Lieutenant Commander Frank Langdon, the intelligence lead aviation machinists' mates from Dutch Harbor, ordnance specialists, aerodynamicists, pilots familiar with Japanese tactics, clipboards open. Pencils are sharpened. Flashlights click on. The dissection, not physical yet, but observational, begins. Langdon circles the fuselage slowly, speaking quietly to the officers beside him. There's almost no armor plating, none at all. Not around the cockpit, not around the fuel tank. They sacrificed everything for maneuverability. One mechanic taps the thin skin of the wing with the back of his knuckle. The sound is alarming. A light, hollow metallic ring. "This thing's made to turn, not survive," he mutters. Every measurement recorded at Dutch Harbor confirms this. The Zero is a blade, razor sharp, devastating but fragile, and fragility can be exploited. Within days, Naval Command sends orders. Get the aircraft to the United States mainland immediately. Priority, extreme. Preparations begin to ship the Zero first to Seattle, then by rail to North Island Naval Air Station in San Diego, the heart of American naval aircraft testing. There, test pilots have access to wind tunnels, flight diagnostics, and the nation's top engineers. But transporting it won't be easy. The Zero is delicate. One wrong move, and the wings could crumple like paper. A misaligned strap could shear the fuselage. Even exposure to moisture for too long could trigger corrosion. So the Dutch Harbor mechanics work with painstaking care, crating the aircraft, supporting the wing spars, padding the control surfaces, securing the engine, stabilizing the tail. Every part is inspected twice, then again by an officer. The Japanese characters painted near the cockpit, marking Koga's unit and aircraft number, seem to watch them as they work, ghosts of the pilot who never imagined his aircraft would be studied by the enemy. By the time the crate is sealed, it looks less like a war machine and more like a sarcophagus, except inside is not a body, but a weapon whose secrets might save thousands of American lives. The Zero leaves Dutch Harbor on a US Navy transport, moving slowly through the northern Pacific. For days, the ship plows through violent seas. Sailors check the crate repeatedly, making sure no part has shifted. When the vessel reaches the mainland, a carefully assigned team takes over. They load the crate onto a railway flat car, specially padded and guarded. Windows are kept covered when passing through cities so civilians cannot see what is being transported. The secrecy is extreme. The US military understands exactly what they possess. This aircraft is not a curiosity. It is the cornerstone of a tactical revolution. And Japan cannot know that their most advanced fighter now sits in American hands. 2 weeks after its discovery on the tundra, the Akutan Zero finally arrives at North Island, where it will be unpacked inside a sealed hangar normally used for top-secret aircraft development. It's here that two men step into history. Commander Eddie Sanders, one of the Navy's top test pilots, Lieutenant Commander Frederick Trapnell, perhaps the finest aviation evaluator in the service. Both men are experienced, analytical, and fearless, the exact combination needed to test fly an enemy fighter that could easily kill them. Sanders walks around the crated fuselage as workers remove the final boards. The moment the Zero emerges into the light, the hangar fills with quiet murmurs. Every mechanic feels the same startling reaction. It is beautiful, not because it's Japanese, but because the craftsmanship is extraordinary. The smooth lines, the aerodynamic efficiency, the subtle asymmetry in the wing design, the meticulous alignment of control cables. Sanders had heard the legends. Now he sees them with his own eyes. Trapnell, hands behind his back, leans close to the cockpit opening. "We're looking at the aircraft that tore through our boys in '42, he says softly. "Let's give them something to fight back with." The reconstruction process begins immediately. Dozens of skilled American mechanics swarm the aircraft, logging every bolt, bracket, and weld. The propeller is replaced with an equivalent American unit for safety. Damaged landing gear components are reforged based on measurements. The engine, the heart of the Zero, is examined with surgical precision. When they remove the cowling, a collective gasp echoes through the hangar. The engine is almost pristine, a 940 horsepower Sakai 12 radial engine, the exact power plant that US pilots have been trying to outrun and outclimb for months. It is cleaned, inspected, and reassembled under supervision. Sanders watches the process carefully. He knows the first flight will be his responsibility. He knows every bolt must be perfect, every cable must be checked, every contamination risk must be removed. Slowly, the Zero comes back to life. By early September 1942, it stands ready on the tarmac at North Island, fully restored, fully functional, and painted with new US markings to avoid accidental shoot-downs. The moment the hangar doors open and sunlight touches the aircraft, Sanders inhales sharply. This is the moment the Pacific War will begin to change. This is the moment the United States finally understands its enemy. And tomorrow morning, he will take it into the sky. September 20th, 1942, North Island Naval Air Station. The sun rises over San Diego in a haze of orange and gold, spreading light across the Pacific and onto the runway where the Akutan Zero sits glistening with morning dew. Mechanics stand in a half circle around it, hands on hips, checking and rechecking their work. The air smells of fuel, engine oil, and salt carried in from the sea, the familiar perfume of aviation. But today it stings differently. It stings with anticipation. Commander Eddie Sanders, dressed in a tan flight suit, walks slowly toward the aircraft. His footsteps echo against the concrete. The moment he touches the Zero's wing, he feels it immediately, how impossibly light it is. A plane built like a razor blade, not a hammer. He pulls himself into the cockpit. The interior shocks him with its minimalism. No armor plate, no heavy instruments, no thick structural supports, just thin aluminum framing, lightweight cables, and an engine designed for raw performance. He tightens his harness, glances at the ground crew, and raises 2 fingers. Engine start. The propeller spins. The Sakai 12 engine coughs once, twice, then roars with a deep, resonant growl that vibrates Sanders' ribcage. The hangar doors shudder. Mechanics look at one another in disbelief. For the first time on American soil, a Japanese Zero is alive. Sanders taxis to the runway. He holds the brakes, throttles up, and the aircraft trembles like a predatory animal pulling against a leash. The runway commander gives him a thumbs up. Sanders releases the brakes. The Zero explodes forward. Acceleration is immediate, smooth, almost unnervingly effortless. The lightweight frame makes the aircraft leap ahead in a way no American fighter of 1942 can match. At 70 metrage, Sanders lifts the stick. The Zero leaves the ground, like a feather caught by the wind. Sanders climbs to 3,000 feet, then 5,000, then 7,000, the engine humming with the perfect mechanical rhythm that Japanese engineers built into every moving part. He tests the controls, banking left and right. The aircraft responds like it's alive. The Zero doesn't turn, it pivots. There's no hesitation, no sluggish roll like the F-4F Wildcat, no resistance from heavy plating. Sanders can feel why American pilots have been dying in dogfights. In a flat turn, the Zero is unbeatable. It feels like it rotates around its own center point. Sanders tries a tight loop. The Zero flips upward with astonishing grace, climbing almost vertically before falling over the top of the loop, with barely any loss of energy. He speaks into the test recorder strapped to his chest. "This is the lightest, fastest turning aircraft I've ever flown. It behaves like it has no weight. American pilots have no business turning with this plane." Then he tests roll rate, snapping the controls left, then right. The Zero hesitates, a tiny delay, a sluggish resistance. Then the roll begins. Sanders frowns. There it is, weakness. He performs high-speed dives next. The aircraft handles poorly, vibrating slightly as the airframe strains against the wind. Above 250 knots, the controls stiffen dramatically. Another weakness. Sanders smiles for the first time since taking off. Japan's greatest weapon has cracks, and America is about to exploit every one of them. Over the next several days, Sanders performs 24 test flights in the Akutan Zero. Each one reveals more secrets. The Zero loses roll control above 250 knots. It cannot dive as fast as American fighters. Its fuel tanks ignite easily. Its controls stiffen dangerously in high-speed maneuvers. Its lightweight structure tears under excessive G-forces. It stalls abruptly in tight vertical climbs. With every finding, Sanders and Trapnell rewrite the tactical manuals. The new doctrine becomes brutally simple. 1. Never dogfight a Zero in a slow-turning fight. It will win every time. 2. Use diving attacks. Boom and zoom. American aircraft like the F-4F Wildcat and P-38 Lightning are heavier and stronger. They can pull out of dives the Zero can't follow. 3. Attack from above, slash through and dive away. Don't stay in circle. Strike once and leave. 4. Use high-speed rolls to escape. The Zero can't roll fast at high speeds. Use that. 5. Never let a Zero get behind you. It will stay there forever. These rules spread through naval aviation like wildfire. Flight schools adopt them instantly. Carrier air groups rewrite their teaching methods. Pilots heading to Guadalcanal receive the new doctrine within days. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, American aviators feel like they have a fighting chance. And that chance is built from the wreckage of the Akutan Zero. The U.S. Naval Air Forces conduct dozens of mock dogfights using the captured Zero. They pit it against F-4F Wildcats, P-39, Airacobras, P-40, Warhawks, P-38, Lightnings, early prototypes of the F-6F Hellcat. Each test reveals even more patterns. Against the F-4F, the Zero wins every turning fight. Against the P-40, the Zero climbs away with ease. Against the early F-6F prototypes, the Zero maintains tighter turns. But the moment high-speed maneuvers begin, the tables turn. The Wildcat can dive away. The P-40 can roll out of reach. The P-38 can hit and run with deadly dives. And the Hellcat, still in development, starts to look like a future Zero killer. Powerful, armored, tough, and fast. Trapnell writes in his evaluation, "The Zero is a magnificent machine, but it is fragile. Break its strengths, and you break the pilot." These insights feed directly into the design of the F-6F Hellcat, the aircraft that would later achieve a kill ratio of 19.1 against the Zero. In October 1942, the new tactics are sent to American Marine and Navy pilots fighting over Guadalcanal. The timing is perfect. The skies above Henderson Field have become a graveyard, with U.S. pilots facing veteran Japanese aces who have mastered the Zero. The orders arrive in a simple briefing memo. Do not turn with the Zero. Use altitude, use speed, use diving attacks. Hit once, break away, repeat. The first Marine pilots to use the new doctrine return from their missions visibly shaken, but victorious. One pilot, Lieutenant James "Pug" Sutherland, explains to his squadron, "When you dive, he can't follow. When you roll hard at speed, he slides. The Zero can't keep up. Don't let him pull you into a circle fight. You'll die there." Kill counts begin to change. American losses decrease. Japanese kill ratios fall. The myth of the Zero's invincibility shatters, and every pilot knows why. Somewhere far to the north, on a lonely island wrapped in fog, a single crash gave them the blueprint for survival. In Tokyo, Japanese Naval Command continues believing Koga crashed into the ocean. They assume his aircraft sank into deep water. They never suspect the truth. Their best fighter was captured intact. Their most advanced engine was studied. Their weaknesses were exposed. Their opponent redesigned tactics because of one crash landing. American pilots begin calling the captured aircraft Koga Zero. Japanese pilots never know his legacy helped destroy their air superiority. By late 1942, American pilots no longer fear the Zero as they once did. They respect it, but they understand it. They exploit its weaknesses. They avoid its strengths. They stop treating it like a phantom and start treating it like a machine that can be beaten. And in every dogfight, every slash attack, every dive escape, one truth hangs in the air. The Akutan Zero changed everything, but its greatest lessons, the ones that would reshape American fighter design and strategy, are still unfolding. Because now, US engineers have the knowledge to build something new, something stronger, something faster, something deadlier. This next chapter of the Zero's legacy won't take place in the sky, but in the workshops and wind tunnels of American industry, where the final breakthrough is about to begin. The flight tests of the Akutan Zero spread through the Navy's engineering circles like an electrical current. Reports land on the desks of aircraft designers, aerodynamicists, and military strategists from San Diego to Washington, D.C. What began as a curiosity, an intact enemy fighter dragged out of an Aleutian bog, has now become something far greater. It has become a blueprint. The Akutan Zero is no longer just an aircraft, it's a teacher, and its lessons are written into every report Commander Eddie Sanders files. Peak performance, peak weakness, peak opportunity, all of it documented with absolute clarity. The most valuable document is Sanders' final summary, which lands on the desk of Grumman Aircraft Engineering Corporation. Inside, Sanders declares, "Speed and power can overcome the Zero. Build tough, build fast, do not build light." Before Akutan, American engineers designed fighters in reaction to combat reports. Fragmented stories from dogfights, often conflicting, often confusing. Now, for the first time, engineers have hard data from flights made in a controlled environment. Grumman takes these findings and stamps them onto their ongoing project, the F-6F Hellcat. And this is where the Akutan Zero becomes more than a tactical resource. It becomes a design guide. In Bethpage, New York, Grumman engineers gather around blueprints, comparing the Zero's performance to their prototype, XF-6F-1. Their conclusion is swift and unanimous. The prototype is not enough. It must be stronger. It must be faster. It must beat the Zero in every area where the Zero fails. And the Akutan data provides the map. Weakness, number 1, poor high-speed controls. The Hellcat is designed with incredibly robust ailerons and hydraulic assist. Weakness, number 2, fragile construction. The Hellcat receives heavy armor plating and self-sealing fuel tanks. Weakness, number 3, slow roll rate at high speeds. Engineers optimize the Hellcat for roll performance during dives. Weakness, number 4, poor diving characteristics. The Hellcat becomes one of the best diving fighters of the war. Weakness, number 5, loss of control above 250 plus knots. The Hellcat thrives at 300 plus knots. Grumman Chief Engineer William Schwendler looks over the final data and says, "The Zero is built to dance. Let's build a boxer." And so they do. The Hellcat becomes a masterpiece, designed specifically to kill Zeros. When the first operational F-6F-3 takes flight, test pilots return from their runs with stunned expressions. This aircraft does not merely exceed expectations, it obliterates them. It climbs faster than the Zero. It rolls faster at high speed. It dives at speeds the Zero cannot follow without ripping apart. It absorbs bullets the Zero can't survive. When the Hellcat enters combat in late 1943, the results border on unbelievable. 19 Zeros destroyed for every Hellcat lost. And the beating heart of that success is the tactical and engineering knowledge gained from the Akutan Zero. By early 1943, American aviators fighting over the Solomons, New Guinea, and the Central Pacific now fly with confidence, built on knowledge they didn't have the year before. They no longer stare in shock as Zeros dance circles around them. They no longer assume the Japanese pilot is unbeatable. They no longer fall into the deadly turning battles that claimed so many lives. Instead, they fight like engineers trained them. Dive, strike once, break away, climb again, repeat. Pilots call it slashing attacks. Japanese pilots call it something else. The American death dive. Again and again, dogfights unfold, where Zeros whirl rapidly beneath American fighters, trying desperately to climb after them, only to stall, spin, or fall away under the weight of their own structural limits. American pilots watch all of this from above, knowing exactly why it's happening, because a Zero on Akutan Island taught them. By late 1943, Japanese commanders begin to notice something strange. American pilots, once cautious in engagements, are now aggressive. American losses plummet. Japanese losses climb. Dogfights that once ended in zero victories now end in zero wreckage. And not just on one front, everywhere. Over Bougainville, over Rabaul, over the Marshalls, over Saipan, over the Philippine Sea. Everywhere the Hellcat goes, zeros fall. During the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot in June 1944, one of the largest carrier air battles in history, the truth becomes undeniable. The Zero is obsolete. Hundreds of Japanese fighters are destroyed for minimal American losses, and the men who fly the Hellcats know exactly why. They learned the Zero's secrets from a single wreck found in the northern fog. The Akutan Zero remains at North Island for months as a teaching tool. Pilots study it, engineers test it, mechanics dissect it. Tactical instructors use it to demonstrate strengths and weaknesses to new aviators. It becomes a legend, one every American pilot hears about before heading to the front. But time is relentless, and so is war. In February 1945, during a routine test flight demonstration, tragedy strikes. A student pilot attempting a high-speed landing overshoots the runway. The Zero, already weakened from years of stress and examinations, fails catastrophically. The landing gear collapses, the fuselage buckles, the historic aircraft skids, flips and crumples into the ground. There is nothing left to save. The most important single aircraft recovered during World War II dies in an accident far from the battlefield. But its legacy is already immortal. History rarely remembers the name Tadayoshi Koga, the 19-year-old Japanese pilot whose fatal crash set all of this in motion. He was skilled, disciplined, proud, young. He died thinking he had failed his mission. He never knew that his death would help shape enemy tactics, enemy aircraft design, and ultimately the outcome of the Pacific Air War. He became the silent, unintended architect of a revolution, and no American pilot ever celebrated his demise. Many saluted him in memory, honoring the sacrifice of a pilot who fought for his country with the skill expected of any warrior. War twists fate cruelly. Koga became a part of American aviation history not because he wanted to, but because history itself decided so. By the end of 1945, American air dominance is complete. The F-6F Hellcat, the F-4U Corsair, the P-38 Lightning, the F-8F Bearcat, the P-51 Mustang in later Pacific operations. All of them owe pieces of their tactical doctrine, and in some cases, design refinements, to the lessons learned from the Akutan Zero. Modern historians call the aircraft the most valuable wreck in aviation intelligence, a gift wrapped in tragedy. Japan's greatest error, America's greatest windfall, but its true essence is simpler. It was a teacher, a lesson in metal and fuel and engineering, a floating blueprint waiting to be found in the fog, a mistake that reshaped the air war. And because of it, thousands of American pilots survived dogfights they might otherwise have lost. The Zero on Akutan Island did more than crash. It changed the war. It changed everything.